To this story now, opposition parties are demanding that President Cyril Ramaphosa appear before Parliament to answer outstanding supplementary questions on the Phala Phala farm robbery. But National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula says Ramaphosa will only be available later this month. And the opposition parties are furious, with some questioning the autonomy of Parliament. To find out if the opposition party's argument has any legal basis, we're joined now by Legal Analyst Mbekezeli Benjamin. Mbekezeli, good morning and thank you very much for your time as always. You actually wrote an interesting article on the Section 89 process. But before we touch on that, let's talk about the current uproar over the date of the 29th, which has now been set for the President to complete his suspended Q&A. I mean, we know, at least from what we've heard, that it was scheduled long before. This particular date is far removed from that interrupted process, but they're looking to combine the two. What do you make of this?
Well, I think it's more of a question of politics and practicality than it is a question of law, because the president was required to answer questions when he came before Parliament last week, but we saw what happened in terms of the disruptions. And so when the next available date is later this month, it is really not reasonable for opposition parties to say to be in uproar because of that. It's sort of like a problem that they created. So in that respect, I don't think that it's reasonable for them to object. But secondly, I don't think it rises to the level of violating a constitutional provision or any constitutional duty on the part of the president. So I think it's more politics than it is about law.
But in that particular moment, we saw live on television that beyond them deciding to suspend the answering of those particular questions or that particular question, they went on among themselves to commit that there's got to be an arrangement of an earlier date to sort of create the impression of the urgency of this matter, that in as much as they were all aware that there would be a seating beyond that particular one, they wanted to create an impression of them taking this as a far more serious matter that would warrant some sort of interruption in the diary of the president and that of parliamentarians. So does it not create an impression of it's business as usual at the next sitting, we will answer those questions, and so on and so forth?
Well, this issue is very serious, no doubt. But I'm not sure that in the current crisis that we face as a country, it is more serious than those other crises. So in taking the president out of his schedule in order to prioritize this particular issue, we don't know what other issues are impacted further down the line. And again, the president had a responsibility to answer the question last week when he came to Parliament. But we sat through 3 hours of noise and disruption, and the president couldn't answer the question, not because he didn't want to, and perhaps whatever answer he gave, Parliament could then have enforced greater accountability based on the answer he gave. But the fact that he wasn't given an opportunity to answer, then it creates a very serious problem, I think, because now the president has sort of gotten off scot-free and unable to answer, and not because he wasn't ready to give the answer, but because it was the opposition parties. So in that situation, both sides are to blame, both the president for failing to answer, but also the opposition parties for disrupting him and not giving him the chance to answer. In that situation, it is unreasonable for them to say, no, he must come at an earlier date, because that affects other issues on the president's diary.
Fair enough. But, you know, interestingly enough, the president is of the view that he did answer. And this was something I had raised with an analyst earlier ahead of that Q&A session, that when I had looked at the order paper and looked at the question, the phrasing thereof was to a certain extent problematic, because it spoke of, did you not find it prudent to take the nation into your confidence? So you're asking, and somebody can give you yes or no. At this point, I prefer to continue with the other processes that are unfolding. The phrasing thereof, it sort of limited the type of answer you can get. I don't know if you had spotted the same thing, if you took note that the manner in which it was phrased and the answer, it was really somewhat problematic.
Well, I didn't see the specific phrasing of this question, but it is important to remember that it is the opposition parties who phrase the questions to the president. It is not the president who decides what the question is or what the question looks like. So if you ask, well, as any lawyer would tell you, if you ask the wrong question, you'll probably get the wrong answer. So that is likely what happened. But again, in terms of the rules of Parliament, there is an opportunity to ask a supplementary question. So based on whatever answer that the President gave at the time, based on the question that was written on the order paper, there could have been an opportunity for parties to stand up and ask supplementary questions to get more clarification or more information based on the President's answer.
Now, Mbekezeli, we seem to have run out of time, but I cannot just leave you without asking you this. That particular article, you have concern with the addition or submission of names of former Constitutional Court justices. Just talk to me about your concerns around this. You think it's not necessarily desirable?
Well, very briefly, Mfundo, I think it is not desirable. Already judges are being dragged into politics on a day-to-day basis in terms of the cases that are taken to court. Cases that should really not even be in court. They should really be dealt with in Parliament, or they should even be dealt with internally within political parties. They all make their way to court. So already judges are involved too much in politics. But now this impeachment process, it even involves them even further, in that you now, a parliamentary run process, you're involving judges in a way that is unnecessary. The rules of Parliament say that a legal expert must be involved on this panel. It doesn't say a judge. It says you may consider a judge if it's necessary, and we believe that in this particular instance, there is no reason, there is no justification, there's no need for a judge to sit on the impeachment panel.
Mbekezeli, thank you very much for your time this morning. That was legal analyst Mbekezeli Benjamin.